Hello, civilized people. Did you know that past Saturday was apparently a holiday? No, not the fun kind of holiday, religious holiday, or even a Hallmark holiday. It was a holiday for nothing more than to protest. To protest a president so fascistic that these protesters were able to spend all day protesting basically everything he does before being able to go home to their families without being shot in mass. A president so monarchical that his decrees, if you choose to call them that, are frequently stopped in their tracks by judges, even when he has the authority to make them. Truly, if that isn't a fascistic monarch, I don't know what is. So wave the flag of a foreign country you don't want to get deported to. Attack lines of cops as they try to keep you from blocking traffic. Throw fireworks at soldiers guarding government property. And be sure to bring your walker and heart medication. Because today, on the Goss and Road podcast, we are going to be talking about the real world consequences of No King's Day. So, Colt, how you doing?
I'm tired of it.
Tired of it?
Tired of it.
Yeah,
Do something
I get
interesting or stop trying to hog the limelight.
it. Yeah, kind of. So, honestly, for what it's worth, apparently the protesters were successful enough because we still don't have a king, and it's 2 days later. So, good on them, I suppose.
Indeed.
Yeah, but anyway, yeah, I guess we're not quite in for what is it? Diversity is our strength, season two, the sequel to Summer of Love just yet, I don't think. But there have been a lot of protests going on, and well, I don't think I think you'll agree. You, I don't think the protesters really have impacted anything. Do you? As far as
I think people that
generating.
might have been on their side are less likely to, but I mean that's just my own feelings. That's not backed up by anything.
Yeah, you. That's the problem with a lot of protests now is that it generally has the reverse effect because well, they sort of take downward turns, and it's not like some of the old civil rights protests where you had civil disobedience and people were arrested. uh you you're not seeing the same, I guess, elegance in that you saw back in the day, and that does turn off a lot of people. But yeah, I think we're in agreement. I don't think they actually managed to accomplish anything toward their goals, but I do think that there's a lot to learn from this. And it's not so much, any kind of moral lesson, so much, I guess, just within our field. There were a lot of things that, you could just notice, if you will, that there's writing on the wall. And we'll get into those specific things. But, all right. So, just going to leap into this, Colton, with before you had No King's Day, you had a number of protests emerging in cities. And these protests were in response to ICE raids by Immigration Control and Enforcement. They were going in, getting illegal aliens, arresting them. People spotted them, started attacking them in the streets to stop them from doing their job. And the sort of the central point of this was Los Angeles. From there, the state of California basically didn't step in to aid the federal government in that capacity. So Trump had to basically federalize the California National Guard to bring them in to protect federal buildings while this was ongoing. And It's not exactly been a very peaceful protest as the media keeps claiming. It's not quite as bad as some of the BLM riots, and it's certainly not the LA riots of the 90s. But something tells me that I don't think looting an Apple store, for example, is doing much to, really further the cause of stopping immigration enforcement. Neither is burning electric vehicles in a street or throwing fireworks at soldiers in the military. Do you think that's a fair assessment?
Sure. Like, I just don't understand it. Like, you'd think the people that wouldn't be out there, like they would want to be keeping their heads down, right?
You would think that. And not all of these people are illegal migrants. You have plenty of, citizens that are very much opposed to immigration laws being enforced. But to try and put into perspective some of the crazy shit that has happened at these events, I have seen a grown ass woman stand in front of a crowd that had people of all ages in it. Like, I thought that was indecent exposure. Maybe that's just me. Um, you have had people basically throw. You're familiar with mortar fireworks, aren't you,
Mm-hmm.
Colt?
Yeah.
Uh, well, those are something that has been hurled and fired at police. That Roman candles, and it's unlikely to kill somebody, but this can seriously burn someone. And they're just firing these things at cops. They're firing them at horses. This is not a good look. And they're basically, the Trump administration is basically saying this is an invasion. And you have a bunch of protesters saying, no, we're not, while waving around foreign flags and launching essentially explosives at cops and soldiers. Something tells me that that's probably not going to help them, you know, improve their perception. Now, another important thing in this is that in regards to the whole flag waving thing, there are now NGOs purchasing American flags and distributing them to the people in these protests because it was such a bad visual. But they've also just started burning them. So, you know, again, I don't. So basically, we're going into No King's Day with a very bad opinion of these protests. Now, moving on to the day of the protests themselves. Colton, you and I have talked a good bit about our thoughts on, violent crime relating to politics. And crazy is crazy. Crazy is not a political ideology. And I truly do detest when criminal activities are laid at the feet of either party.
Mm-hmm.
And especially in a case like this where it's so bizarre. So, this past Saturday, to kick off the day, a member of the Minnesota House and a member of the Minnesota State Senate were both gunned down by an assailant dressed as a cop and in a police vehicle, or what was reported as a police vehicle. In reality, it was a vehicle used by private security, uh, who came to their homes and gunned them down alongside their spouses. While one survived along with his wife, the other and her husband were not so fortunate. Um, and this is tragedy. This really should not happen in any world. But the current suspect, who is thankfully now in custody, he himself is what makes this really fascinating, as this is what hit the media at the start of this day. The primary suspect, one Vance Bolter, easily one of the strangest profiles built up from by the media and from what we ourselves were able to find of any sort of murderer in history. He was first appointed by Mark Dayton, uh, former Democratic governor of Minnesota, who preceded Tim Walz. And Tim Walz also appointed him to the Governor's Workforce Development Council. And yeah, so he did hold an appointment from the governor. However, prior to that, his only work experience was working at a Marathon gas station and managing a 7-Eleven. Though his wife was a staffer for Tim Walz when he was a House member. Upon leaving the workforce board, he started a security firm named Praetorian, and then became the CEO of an NGO which helped to train workers in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, as well as help them immigrate to the United States. And clearly, because, this isn't nuts enough, keep in mind he also had flyers in the back of his vehicle for the No Kings protest. He is married, he has 5 children, and apparently the money from his NGO dried up about 3 months ago as he began looking for work again. Like I was able to find like videos of his with him, putting himself out there on Indeed. But moreover, I think what really makes this creepy, Colton, whenever he showed up at these people's houses, he was wearing a mask like Michael Myers in Halloween.
Sure, that wasn't just his face.
Dude, oh my God. Like, what kind of person opens looks through the peephole in their door at 4 in the morning and says, you know what, I'm going to open my door for this? Like, that's nuts, man.
Yep.
That is absolutely insane. And yeah, we also know that on the day after the shooting, his wife was caught trying to leave Minneapolis with a handgun and a passport, but none of the children. But because this isn't crazy enough, the media has also given all sorts of lovely insights into this, and I think it's safe to say that a lot of this just isn't adding up. So not only was he the CEO of an NGO and was married and had 5 kids, but he apparently had a roommate who was a pizza delivery guy for Papa John's currently. Do you know many, 50-year-old guys with 5 kids, a wife who, have a pizza delivery guy as a roommate?
Not unheard of.
Yeah, it's a bit odd.
I think it's
Uh,
just more telling that his firm was called Praetorian.
yeah,
I feel like that's just a delightful bit of irony.
it is. The Praetorian Guard had a very tragic end, if you will.
What do you mean tragic end? Their entire existence was tragic. They were responsible for more Roman Empire emperor deaths than like any other cause.
You're not wrong. They sort of got deleted for a consistent pattern of imperial treachery.
Hey, increase our
And
pay, otherwise we're going to kill you.
I mean, that's a hell of a way to ask for a promotion. But also, as of recording this, a supposed hit list has been released to the media, which appears to show a list of pro abortion politicians. And they are also claiming that he was preaching Christian nationalism in Haiti and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And like, I've not seen any evidence of any of that personally. I've seen the list, but I've not seen any context related to it. So I don't know.
I personally am choosing to believe all of it only for my own entertainment.
Yeah. Another thing that is regularly being repeated, but which we have figured out to be false, is that supposedly both of the politicians who he shot had been involved in Minnesota's recent repeal of laws granting government benefits, Medicaid, Medicare, what have you, to illegal immigrants. And one of them certainly was, but the other was not. He was only one of them that was involved in that. So it's clearly not the case that that was purely the motive. It seems, but I don't think anybody's capable of truly understanding the mind of a madman. So I don't know. And actually, thank you to you, Colton, for pointing that out because everything I had seen and read indicated that both of them were. So thank you for that.
Uh huh.
But yes, now I know we're both in agreement that lunatics shouldn't be, held up as, you know, even people that are doing things that are politically motivated should not be necessarily meant to reflect the party as a whole, either Republican or Democrat. I think it's a bit silly to, judge people by the quantity of crazy that they have.
Indeed.
That being said, in checking into this, I did come across a study that's very interesting, Colton.
Hmm.
Back in 2022, there was a bit of research done on mental health and political ideology. And there are basically two major takeaways from it that are really kind of startling. And do you care to guess where crazy is found? And keep in mind, this is not necessarily like people saying they have poor mental health. These are people who the statistics for this are for the number of people who have been diagnosed with a mental health disorder.
Hmm.
Uh, so, of people who have been diagnosed with mental health disorders, care to guess where those heavily lie? And it's by gender and by
Robert, just from your tone of voice, I can
biology.
already tell. Just go ahead and get to
Well, basically, comically, it's like moderate and conservative men are both incredibly low on that spectrum. Uh, liberal women sit at over 53%, though,
it. Mm-hmm.
which is staggering. And also, throughout this, at every single age bracket, the number of mental health diagnoses is at least double amongst liberals, which also, just given the youthful hormones thing, sort of makes sense because they tended to be younger at that point in time. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think this should be taken, and just plastered on everything. But I do think it's an interesting study because it certainly shows that youth would be more inclined to this.
I
But
disagree.
what do you mean?
I just the, there is a replication crisis in social sciences, and the fact that they don't replicate anything. So I just straight up don't believe any social studies like paper.
That that's actually a fair assessment. I don't know to what degree I would take this as being good quality, but I do think that if nothing else, I think mental health does need to be investigated more,
Oh, definitely.
and hopefully, just because of I mean, obvious differences between men and women, obvious differences in environment between where a lot of it's no secret most conservatives live in more rural areas or live outside of cities. Like, is that having an impact on things? I don't think that the political ideology is necessarily the root of it. I think there could be a lot more involved, and there's not all that much that's simple about the human mind. And I think if it was simple, we'd be too simple to care about it. But yes, so I don't think this is necessarily something that should be applied. It's something I'm seeing cited a lot in this. And anytime where you've had, like, you even had it during the assassination attempts on Trump, this stuff was cited a bit. But I don't think it's terribly valid as something that should be, I don't think this should come up every time that somebody does something stupid. Do you
Hmm.
agree?
Yeah.
As, yeah, there, there are just limits. But now, moving on to the topics of protest. And this is one where, I find it, the topics themselves that were being protested on No King's Day are very telling, I think, more so than anything. And the first thing that, the media was claiming this was about protesting this primarily. But this Saturday was also the 250th birthday of the United States Army. It is older than the country itself. So you had people protesting the parade that was held in the Capitol to celebrate the 250th birthday. Now, do you think holding a military parade for the 250th anniversary of the Army is necessarily political, Colton?
No, but what they did with it was dumb as hell.
Yeah, I'm not going to pretend I was a huge fan of how they did it, but this was something people were protesting. And it seems like, well, there's not really a clear number in favor or against this. About 40% of the population was in favor of it, 30% were opposed, and 30% didn't give a damn. So it doesn't seem like an issue that's really going to, win anybody over to a cause. Do you agree?
Yeah.
It just doesn't make much sense. But at base, even if you exclude that, it's a issue that's still like 10 points underwater if you include the if you don't include the not interested. Now, have you also noticed that there's well, it's Pride Month now, and have you noticed that there is a lot less Pride stuff this year?
Yes, but I'm also inundated with it just as many people saying, haha, look at all the less pride stuff. So it's almost like nothing changed.
Yeah, the a lot of companies have stepped back from it this year, and the only, in truth, there were companies that were going too far with it. I mean, it's important to remember that a good portion of the country, still have their religious beliefs and they are opposed to it. So a company going out and advertising this stuff does turn them off from going there and buying product. So I don't necessarily think that, everybody sponsoring that stuff is necessarily good for business. And I understand why you wouldn't. That being said, you did see a lot of people, you had these various small groups that seemed to show up and want to almost co-opt things with whatever they were trying to promote. And you did see some LGBTQIA, whatever letters after that you want. I don't, I'm not even trying to remember it at this point. And, but you did see some of that group show up and try to protest. And again, this is an issue where I don't think it's quite as popular as a lot of people think it is. Because even now, actually, even going back to what 2020, you had started to see a lot of cracks in that. Uh, it's been a few years now, but do you remember the polling that I showed you on? It was within the LG that the whole LGBT whatever movement that was polling internally to that on various issues.
No.
I think I showed it to you in 2019 or 2020.
Yeah, no, I don't remember.
All right, because the thing is, and this was fairly notable, the L's, G's, and B's don't really care for anything else after that. Like the group is not as unified as a lot of people think. And I think that's something we're starting to see more and more because you are seeing more organizations come up where it's like you have a few groups in California where it's like, yes, we're gay, but we're also opposed to, like drag queen story time, which is a thing in California apparently. So that group is also fracturing. But the big thing that they seem to be protesting for was the inclusion of trans men in women's sports, which is something that is come under very heavy fire since Trump was inaugurated again. And I think, out of curiosity, if you were to take a guess, what percentage of the population do you think is actually in favor of letting trans women compete in women's sports?
Just them.
It is right under 20%. This is an issue where it is better than 80% of the population of the country are opposed to it. So again, we've got another issue that, you know, nobody really cares about that is being protested.
I have not heard of any protests about this stuff.
It was included in the whole No King's Day thing. You saw people out there protesting it. It depended on location, but these were just various groups being showed up that were showing up, and these were groups that were representing organizations. Like you had groups that were being bussed in for it. Like it's pretty visible in a lot of this stuff. Some locations it's more visible than others, but we I
The
think we're
only
both
thing
familiar.
I've heard about the King's Day stuff is that they were just like emptying out the fucking retirement homes.
Oh God, yes, we will get to that very much so because that gets to the real takeaway from this. And the other the other two issues that are really worth throwing out are related to immigration and the National Guard's use in California. And while well, actually this issue has seen more movement in the last 3 years than really any other, and that is on the matter of immigration. I never thought I'd see this number, but most good quality polling in relation to immigration now says that about two-thirds of American citizens want all illegal aliens removed from the country, not just those with criminal records within the country. I never thought I'd see that number get so high.
Yeah, it's definitely shifted.
Moreover, it's above 50% for legal migrants. First generation, fresh off the boat, legal migrants, more than 50% of them want all illegal migrants removed. And it's over 50% among Hispanics as well. Like all of these, like This is like it is almost a 70-30 issue. It is a rounding error from being a 70-30 issue. And that's nuts. So that's another issue where, again, the issues that are being protested at these events were protests that are very, very much underwater in favorability. And the last group, well, the last, block that I'm going to talk about that people were protesting were they were protesting Trump's use of the National Guard to protect federal property in California, as they viewed that as overreach. And I'm somewhat sympathetic to it, uh, but where California was not actually doing their job of, providing an environment where the federal government could actually function there, I get that it was necessary. But again, this is another issue that they're underwater on, Colton. 60% of the public approves of the National Guard having been called up for that. That's something I never thought I would see.
I think it's just manufacturing issues so that they could have a, I what is the term I'm looking for? It's where it's manufactured consensus, right? It's just suddenly leadership says thing, so thing is the thing, right? It's
Yeah.
I don't think anybody had any issue with this until there was an issue being made of it, and then people go, "Oh yeah."
Yes. And that brings us to the media, Colton. The lovely media. And, we've talked about it before. Whenever you think of mainstream media, who actually watches it, Colton?
Old people,
Exactly. Old people. And who turned out for these protests?
old women.
Nailed it. Seriously. Like, if you looked at, a lot of streams, certainly you had more young people in LA and areas where you had the ICE riots already going on. But, like, at these protests, the median age of the protester was probably in their 60s. It was very old for a protest. And I think we discussed this in a previous episode, but it honest to God looks like the last of the boomers have shifted from being conservative to being liberal. And I think that actually has something to do with the media.
Definitely. I mean, I wouldn't go as far as to say that. I would just say that they've just been one-shotted by the alarmist 24/7 news cycle. Like beforehand, I think there was even a law. I think Obama got rid of the law where, you weren't allowed to propaganda like to have propaganda on the mainstream media in the news, and he got
Yep.
rid of that law. And uh, boomers didn't like I don't blame them 100%. Like they didn't grow up in this. They were like, "Oh, journalism was a respected profession where people would like grow up and aspire to be a journalist like an astronaut." And now it's
Yeah.
like if someone sees that someone's a journalist, it's like, "Oh, you couldn't hack it as a fantasy slop writer?"
Yeah. You nailed it.
And it's just
Any,
it's not a respectable profession anymore, and it's not even it's seen as more of something like, at least from people my age, where it's like, all right, you did some volunteering in college and you got connections with people in the party, but you don't want to work for the party. So that you talk to your people, you get a job, you end up working for the local news.
yeah. And I think a lot of it comes down to punditry instead of news as well. People aren't watching, the nightly news or watching Rachel Maddow or they are watching
Or may God
Greg
forgive me
Gutfield.
for uttering his name, Jimmy Kimmel's late night show.
Oh God.
Yeah, right.
Late night shows used to be funny. Like I remember Johnny Carson. Those were good days, man.
I
Those were
can't I
really good.
can't fathom them not just being the 1 hour propaganda show.
Yeah. And basically, yeah, like Jimmy Kimmel gets up, Orange Man bad, and then the audience laughs. And then
That's
he,
been his
I don't know,
opening for like forever.
yeah.
I hear it sometimes, walking through my house. One of my roommates leaves the TV on, and I'm just like, I want to mute it. It's bad. Like I'm just like it. You say this every night, man. I think it says
Yeah,
something more about me than him, though, that I end up wandering my house at midnight.
yeah. But on the topic of these protests, we basically saw the things people were protesting were deeply unpopular. And I think in a way this is sort of, exposing the wounds of a lot of the NGOs that have played in the political world, at least within the United States. Because this was an incredibly expensive undertaking. Like there were many hundreds of protest locations that were established by, these NGOs going to local governments and saying, "Hey, we're going to host a protest here." And then on the day of it, what is it? I've heard the numbers I've heard are anywhere between basically a quarter and a third of all of these protest locations had the protest canceled because not enough people showed up to even bother. And that it it kind of feels like it's a sign that the political world might actually be healing. You know?
I don't
Like
know.
it's almost possible to take something positive away from this because it seems like the sway that they once had, which you've certainly seen over the years. I don't think they're wielding it to the same degree anymore. I think they're trying to, but I don't think it's succeeding. What's your take? You just said no, so I'm curious.
Well, I'm far more cynical than you. So I either one, the far more morbid option, um, they've died out or they're in too bad of a health conditions, to go and do that. That explains the overbooking, if you will call it that.
Yeah.
Or two, and then this is the slightly less cynical one, where it's more people that are at least on the younger side are like the politically active, right? Young enough to go and do things in the heat
Yes.
is they just don't care. Whether that's they don't care as in deport people, they don't care as in I don't care, or they don't care as in this literally isn't my problem.
Well, I'm going to throw in another statistic, and then want you to tell me what you think once I give this to you.
Okay.
To throw this into the consideration is right now, as of this moment today, Donald Trump is sitting at a 53% approval rating.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to, excuse me, three statistics, in fact. The Democratic Party nationwide is sitting at a 21% approval rating. And for the first time in the history of modern polling, the majority of people in the United States indicate that the country is headed in the right direction.
Do you have any numbers for the approval rating of the Republican Party?
The approval rating of the Republican Party,
Yeah.
I don't have that one offhand. I think it's in the high 30s or low 40s, if memory serves me.
Well, from what I figured that what's the word about statistics? Wasn't this Mark Twain like something about statistics are lies and damn lies?
Lies, damn lies, liars, and damn liars.
Yeah, something like that. And is that actually Mark Twain, by the way? Or is that just
It is
attributed?
attributed. It is attributed to Mark Twain, but there are numerous other people that it has been attributed to as well. So,
Mm-hmm.
for
Well,
what it's worth, it's accurate. So,
yeah,
we both twisted statistics. We're both guilty. We're those
definitely. Oh yeah.
people.
And I mean that's the nature of the job, right?
Yeah, we never claimed we were the good guys. We're just, the
Yeah.
paid guys.
So at least among the party statistics things, I think those are always low, and the Democrats are certainly worse at being the opposition party. I'm not gonna fault them on that. At least I'm not gonna give them 100%. Haha, you know
Yeah,
they are not very good at being an opposition party,
yeah, they are not.
and especially with the modern environment, which is all the Israel crap, all the Gaza crap. You know what I mean? So like factors in hand, not a very good opposition party. Environmental factors, 20%, I think that could be excusable. I wouldn't tout it to the donors, but I think they could do a lot worse.
Yeah, to my understanding, it's the lowest in record for either party specifically.
No, I mean,
Like
they could literally be on the wrong side of every issue, which I'm sure they are, but they could be
they,
worse.
there is right now the only issue, like of the very hotly contested issues, the only issue that they have that really plays in their favor is abortion right now.
Yeah. Um.
That is the one where they, and credit where it's due. That is one of the two big hot button issues: gun rights and abortion rights. Those are the two big ones, and certainly that's great. The problem is that on when it comes to the LGBTQIA whatever side of things, at least on the specific areas they're pushing it hardest, those are 80-20 issues and they're on the side of 20.
Mhm.
On the immigration thing, they're on the side of, the one third that doesn't want to see basically all illegals deported. Uh like they are on the wrong side of a lot of the very, very clearly decided issues as far as popularity goes.
Yeah. So,
And yeah.
excusing our tangent, what the second one was Trump's approval rating. What was the third one?
You had the third one is that for the first time in the history of
Right.
modern polling, the majority of the American public actually believe the country is headed in the right direction.
Well, I certainly wish I was as delusional as them.
Yeah.
Ignorance must be bliss.
Oh man, ignorance is great.
And then in
Ignorance is
regards to
great.
the Trump thing, I mean, I I really don't like trust those in the sense that okay, there's MAGA people, right? And then MAGA people are there's the insane cult MAGA people, you know, God
Yes.
bless them. And then there's Republicans. And I mean those both negatively.
Basically, you have your hard R Republicans, which those are the ones that will turn out and vote for anything Republican, and then you have your soft R Republicans, where it's like, okay, I like Trumpism, so I'm going to vote for Republicans, but I'm not going to turn out just for anybody who happens to win a primary.
No, yeah, and I don't know. I feel like the Republican Party this governmental cycle, not election cycle, just got to clarify, is they've at least among the Senate and the House, they've been fairly divided in the sense that it took a lot of cajoling to, get the budget passed. It took a lot of acquiescing on issues and adding things and making a big beautiful bill, right? To get the wheels spinning on this. So there's been a lot of division within this, and the Republicans, I guess, at least going back to the first Trump term, like the Democrats aren't good at being an opposition party. The Republicans just can't help themselves when they're a majority party.
Yeah.
So
The yeah. Even in this kind of position, it's like you they have every ability to more or less solidify, you know, I think they're in a position where they could solidify Pennsylvania as a red state if they keep pushing, and possibly even Michigan and Wisconsin. Just because if they push those kinds of trade reforms and formalize them, then those states would love them. But it's
or
just like, no,
or
we
Nevada,
don't want to. I guess even Nevada. just because honestly, you could do you open up Nevada for more mining. That would Nevada needs something other than gambling and whorehouses. As I remember well how hard the coup hit Nevada. Basically, everything shut down. The entire economy was canceled.
Good times.
That was a disaster.
I enjoyed myself.
Well, of course, naturally, you didn't even know anything had gone wrong.
No, I was like, why is there less traffic? This is great. But yeah,
Yeah, the
so
yeah yeah. Basically, I think the takeaway from these protests is that it seems like an act of desperation. It's like we recognize, and I won't. I'm not going to pretend the NGOs do not have political bias. They get their money from governments by and large, so they kiss the ass of whichever party funds them. There are some that are Republicans, some that are Democrat, and all of them are basically equally horrific, and in no way deserve any money for anything, if I'm being honest. But this seems like grasp, a desperate last gasp by a lot of progressive groups to try and demand recognition
I don't
to,
know.
sort
I
of,
have a different conclusion.
what was it?
Rather than it being a desperate last gasp, I'm viewing it as they're playing from the same playbook. They're business as usual. Opposition party, start up some protests. What is it for? Whatever we can flip the deck and see. You
Yep.
know,
And
if we don't have enough support for whatever the current weekly news item is, just do for the same old stuff for gays for you know what I mean. Like it, and it's the same playbook as always.
sort of. The
I
Democrats do
yeah.
have a history with protests. That tends to be their thing.
Also, in it kind of in that regard, is that I forgot what I was going to say. it 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 is just I think never mind. I'll come back to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we've seen these personally. I think we've sort of seen these NGOs push their limits because you had, organizations devoted to, the trans movement. And now they're finding that, wow, we just don't have that much support. And so it's like, all right, let's try and get people mad about something. And it doesn't work. And then they like, it's, get ourselves a majority, caring about, about how we need so many illegal migrants. And no, it's not working. It seems like they have literally started throwing everything at the wall in an act of desperation. At least it seems that way to me.
Oh, I finally remember what I was going to say.
And it just seems like that's not sticking. So what was he had to say?
Well, even lately there's been at least a tick online about how the Democrats are spending money to try and win over the young male vote, right? Or at least figure out what's going on and why they moved Republican, or if they moved at all, if they were always Republican, right?
Yeah,
And it's just stuff like these where, where you're talking about the 80-20 issues, you're talking about these unpopular protests where it's just they're just out of touch.
they are.
That's
They,
kind of my conclusion with that is that they're just out of touch and they're like, well, this has worked in the past.
I, I've got 2 points to make to that, and I agree. You're exactly right that there is. Maybe I am wrong. Maybe they are simply out of touch. But two things that have happened recently that certainly, also point in that direction. The first was David Hogg. He was very well known for his work in the anti-gun world.
Work.
Work. Well, I say that generously.
He was somewhat nearby a school shooting.
He was, and
That's
there I
that's that's
was,
his
man.
entire that's his
That
entire
is
claim to fame.
Well, that paired with the fact that his father either worked for the CIA or FBI. I can't remember which.
Is that
That's
true?
sort of what propelled. That is true. It is true. He had close ties to intelligence services familially. So, he sort of, had some access to be able
S-
to push himself in that regard.
Signal boosted.
Signal boosted, yes. But he was recently removed from the vice chair position of the DNC because, and I shit you not, because of diversity quotas. That was the reason they cited for removing him. And I don't think David Hogg is going to win over any young men at all. He does not have any, masculine appeal, if you will. He doesn't have the machismo of, you know, a lot of the essentially right wing influencers that appeal to young men. But they got rid of the young white guy who was the vice chair of the DNC basically because he wasn't diverse enough. I don't think that is, a good way to win back white guys, young white guys, which is where they were struggling. The other is that the DNC recently recruited somebody to do outreach to college aged men and to go to fraternities. And whenever I think of things that appeal to, college age men, I think of morbidly obese lesbians. Don't you, Colton?
You're
I
getting my
mean,
motor running, Robert.
oh yeah.
I'm kidding.
So she was bragging online about how she was going to be able to go and speak at all of these fraternities across colleges, and none of them let her come.
Well, even more to that point, most young men these days do not go to college. You're
They
already
don't.
going for a minority of men.
Men
You're
are
not trying.
dramatically
Yeah,
more. Yeah, men are much more so going into trade schools these days. Young white men are going to trade schools, and that it's actually a really good choice because they basically come out with no debt and guaranteed, middle class income.
I wouldn't
So
say no debt.
it's nowhere. It's not, the hundreds of thousands of dollars you get going to
True,
college.
payable debt. How about that?
It is manageable debt if you have debt. And a lot of places, and actually something that happened in Trump's first term is that you could get grants to go to trade schools.
You know what? Here's some free advice to Democrats. Democrats, if you're listening to this, if you're listening to our psyop, here it is. It's free. You ready? In
Sure.
the top 10 most populous cities in the U.S., right? Do a program for a lottery for trade school scholarship, 10 scholarships per 10 cities for men. That's it.
Yeah. Something like that. I mean, they control these cities. They control these cities. But, you know, you probably won't see it. Uh, Meanwhile, these guys come out of college or of trade school and don't really have measurable debt, not to the same extent as a college grad. And meanwhile, you've got college grads coming out with degrees that are utterly useless. And somehow they're supposed to be the smart ones. You know,
Hmm.
it doesn't make sense. But yeah, so all in all, I think that these protests over the last few days have basically more or less just shown that I think it sort of solidified the belief in what I view as big problems for the Democrats right now. And I'm not saying the Republicans don't have problems because oh boy, the Republicans have problems. But this I think could be existential crisis for the Democratic Party because it is just foolish choice after foolish choice with a party that is completely shattered. whenever you know how I mentioned the approval rating of the Democratic Party,
Mm-hmm.
and it was in its 30% in the 30% zone.
Mm-hmm.
Well, excuse me, it was in the low 20s. Among Democrats, it has just over one third of Democrats that approve of the Democratic Party right now. That's bad.
Definitely
Your
not
own party
ideal.
is basically saying you suck. Do better than you are currently doing. And I am certain I'm going to guess a lot of that is just progressives being progressives and disliking the party when they don't get their way. Like it's either we love you or we hate you, and there's no real middle ground. I'm assuming that's a good portion of it because that is something you see with the progressive movement. It's not quite as, you know, it tends to be much more the movement itself tends to have a much more visceral response to a lot of things. But anyway, Colton, do you have anything else you wish to add?
No, not particularly.
All right. And I will close it with one thing. All of this, sort of got all of these protests were going on around the time that, you know, Israel decided after, what, almost 40 years of saying that Iran was on the verge of getting a nuclear weapon, that they were finally going to stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon.
Mm-hmm.
So you had a war break out between Iran and Israel.
Calling it a
I
war is
have to
very
say,
generous.
they're just launching missiles at each other.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. It's
Just a little bit
uh,
of artillery between non-bordering nations.
yeah, just exactly. But for all the protests that were out there, did any of them look half as much fun as like the rooftop raves that were happening in Lebanon as missiles flew over?
To be fair, I don't think being in a protest sounds fun in any way. So that kind
So
of biases my answer.
the rooftop raves seemed more fun.
Yes, let it be known on the record, I'm much more in favor of dancing to fun music at night than
What
lighting things on fire during the day.
dancing on a rooftop at night while missiles fly overhead
So
sounds more fun than a protest.
yeah, you know the aurora borealis.
Yeah,
They should
yeah, I
make
know.
a scientific sounding name for the instead of the northern lights, the Middle Eastern rocket colored sky.
I mean, to be fair, it's very pretty to watch them go over at night.
Yeah, like
And
equatorial, like something like that. Let's make a term like that.
yeah, that
Missileless
fluorite.
equatorial. I don't know.
I still get a kick out of it. Saw the video of a guy playing a saxophone while people danced on a rooftop in fucking Lebanon.
They have
That was
front row
glorious.
seats.
And then you could just see the missiles flying overhead from Iran headed to Israel. That's a hell of a light show, man.
Ain't no
It's
party like a
nuts.
bomb Israel party.
Oh my god. Especially not in the Middle East.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. Allegedly. But anyway, to those of you still listening, thank you for doing so. We hope we've managed to entertain you at least a bit today. And who knows, maybe it won't be another 6 weeks between episodes this time, but uh, maybe if something we're talking about actually comes up. But anyway, thank you everybody for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Have a good one, folks.